Welcome everyone to the 10th event of the Solana Wormhole Hackathon. Today we have an amazing guest with us, Jeremy Allaire, who is the co-founder and CEO of Circle. Today, Jeremy and Anatoly are going to do a deep dive into all things Circle. We're going to discuss the recent USDC SPO integration, which now is up to 15 million, I believe, issued. 25 million issued. Amazing. And so we're really excited to have you with us, Jeremy, with the launch of this recent partnership and integration. There's a lot of exciting things to talk about. So I'm going to let Anatoly take it away. For anyone whose first time it is joining us for a discussion, we have a chat panel on the right-hand side, which I see folks are already making use of. And then we have a questions tab. So if you have any questions for Jeremy throughout the panel, just drop your questions there and we'll take the last 10 or 15 minutes to cover them. I think with that covers just about everything. Totally, I'll let you take it away and you'll have fun.
Awesome. Thank you, Austin. So Jeremy, it's amazing to have you. Like obviously at Solana, we're like really excited about the integration, how fast you guys executed. Like you and FTX are like the fastest teams in crypto that we worked with. So like it's been really wonderful to work with you guys.
We were pretty motivated by what's emerging in the ecosystem.
Yeah, us as well. I guess, do you want to kind of maybe give a brief like philosophy of Circle and what you guys are building? Because I think you guys have a really exciting vision.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, you know, Circle's been in the space for about 7 years. That's when we founded the company. You know, we've had a number of products over the years. You know, the core of what we've been up to over the last couple of years has been around USDC and building out a broad suite of platforms and services to make it easy for developers, businesses, fintechs, others to actually use stablecoins, use USDC in a broad range of like payments, commerce, financial applications. I think just stepping back though, you know, I think what's animated the company from inception was, you know, back in late 2012, early 2013, we were really excited about the idea that, you know, essentially you would be able to take what we think of as traditional money, i.e. like reserve currencies or the liabilities of a central bank, and represent those as digital currency. And that you'd be able to, you know, not just have those be digital currency, but run on public networks, run on public internet networks. And so the same kind of infrastructure that we've become accustomed to in the world of sharing data and content and real-time communications and other things, these distributed, decentralized, permissionless, open protocol networks, which is how the internet works, how the internet was built, and how I spent most of the first 20 years of my career, you know, focused on that. You know, could sort of see like that was coming to money. Money would become a native data type on the internet. And effectively, we could get to a place where moving value around, including fiat value and that kind of digital currency, would just be a commodity-free service on the internet. That ultimately, like the transformative opportunity would come once you had that in place and you had like ubiquitous, interoperable, instant global settlement of value. It was really like the programmability of this infrastructure, the fact that you had this data type and you could write financial contracts and economic contracts and you could deploy those for machines to interpret on the internet. That was really going to be what like really unleashed the innovation. So that was back 7 years ago. That's what we got excited about and what we wanted to build. And it took many years to get to a point where even second generation blockchains could even allow you to issue a token or have a smart contract or things that were, you know, those are like bandied about as ideas in early 2013, but it just took a while. And so, you know, now we're, you know, we help, you know, create and launch USDC through a consortium with Coinbase, and you know, we're you know, seeing just tremendous growth in that as a sort of compliant full reserve you know, stablecoin.
That's awesome. Like it's crazy that it took 7 years for us to get here, but also I think we're really blessed that, you know, Ethereum really trailblazed this whole space, and you know, us as like Qualcomm engineers, we can kind of look at what they've accomplished and where they've actually, you know, solved problems for humans, and optimize those. That's like an easier problem, right? Like I didn't have to invent proof of stake. I didn't have to invent cryptography or any of this, or even the fact that there's a virtual machine that's running. I mean, those concepts I think are really powerful. And this sort of technology to me seems like 4 generations ahead of what fintech in Silicon Valley is building.
Yeah, like, I mean, yeah, totally.
Like, are you guys like the most advanced fintech in the U.S.? Like, if as far as I could tell.
Well, I appreciate the thought. I mean, I think like we, when in the early days of Circle, we sort of say like most of fintech is just sort of putting lipstick on a pig, and it's about kind of innovating at the edges of money. User experience, even things like AI-powered credit decisioning, things like that are sort of at the edges of rendering what is the financial system. And so the thing that drew me to crypto was like, no, we're going actually to the core of the nature of money. We're getting to the core of the substrate of how value is stored, how value is exchanged, and then obviously like how you can build layers and layers on top of that. And that's what the internet did for data and content and communications and media. It just sort of said, no, we're going to throw it all out. It's just going to be these primitive data types on these open networks. And like, it's just so clear that that's what's needed for the financial system. And so, that it's just, I think it's in many ways more challenging than a lot of fintech, right? Because we're doing things like fiat digital currency is like getting to a core activity that is historically associated with sovereigns, and there's an enormous superstructure from a regulatory perspective and otherwise around it. So it's not easy to do some of these things. Well,
I don't want to. There's a lot of work to do in traditional fintech, but a lot of it is basically like putting an API on top of like a ACH fax.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, quite different than having programmable banking, which is what you guys have accomplished, I think, with USDC.
Yeah. I mean, there's like, open banking is this idea that, bank accounts have a standard API to interact with them. It's sort of interesting. Things like Plaid, kind of screen scraping, letting people get credentials and data. I think an actual API for money on the internet that is public, that anyone can interact with, is obviously really, really powerful. And that's like more akin to like what HTTP did, right? It sort of said, here's this public API. You put an endpoint on this thing, and any device that connects to it can now get to your content or your software. That was really transformative for content and software and media. We want to see the same thing for money.
Do you guys? I guess like I see a lot of this space as, like fundamentally empowering humans with cryptography, and everything else is almost like an implementation detail. It doesn't matter if it's Solana or Ethereum or whatever, but it's such an immensely powerful idea that you and I can agree on a financial transfer because we have private keys. Is like I kind of see like the world we're building as like kind of the metaverse substrate, right? Like it's no longer like on the internet, right? It is in the elliptical curve space, right? Like we're now like dealing with values in this like the elliptical curve domain.
I mean, I think this is just math, as they say, but it's pretty powerful. It's really funny. There's just a funny anecdote, which is like when we were choosing the name of our company, there are a lot of different criteria. There's a funny story behind all of it. And we outbid Ashton Kutcher for Circle.com, which is kind of amusing. But we like the idea of a brand that was sort of universally recognizable, like a circle. Literally, the symbol is like if you look up in the sky, like it's circles everywhere. But the idea was like crypto is just math, and math is truly universe wide, and we're moving into an era where we may even need, digital currency will be probably the first currency that's intergalactic. That literally, like, I want to settle a transaction with a space station with someone who's on Mars. What am I going to how am I going to do that? I'm not going to use like ACH probably for that, right? I'm probably going to use internet infrastructure and crypto to do that.
I like that ambition. Like, part of the reason why we named Solana is because we could scale potentially to cover the solar system, not intergalactic, I think, but having Circle USDC transfers from Mars to the Earth going through Solana would be pretty fun.
Yeah, we're not far. We're not.
I guess, like, this to me, like, I think like smart contracts are probably the most like high leverage software anyone can write these days. Like, in terms of a small team, like with the folks that we had on previous panels, like Ave and Balancer, they're small startups, 5-6 people that are building these like things that are competing with banks. Like, what kind of, like, I guess, how do you see this like disruption playing out? Like, in your mind, like, what are like the kind of near-term tipping points?
Yeah, I mean, I love that example. I mean, when you think about and people talk about these sort of adoption cycles for new technologies, and there's all these famous charts, of course, that you see where how many years did it take for the radio to become 90% distribution, and then the television, and these sort of accelerating curves, right? And the more that something is basically just software, and the more that it's just software rendered on devices on the internet, whether it's a mobile device or any computer, the faster you get those adoption cycles. And public chains as compute engines, right? So we at Circle, at least, I look at public chains as operating system layers. Effectively, it's a new class of operating system that is an overlay on the existing TCP/IP infrastructure. But it's just software on the internet, and the ability to execute, to target the VM, to put code on the VM, and to put that in distribution in a way that any browser can interact with it, or any other client that implements that protocol can interact with. You get these incredible adoption curves. And so you have things like DeFi, and I mean, it's remarkable that a small team can create a protocol, and then if you have something like stablecoins, like, all of a sudden, it's billions of value that's there. I think the interesting thing over the next 2 to 3 years, and this is also why we were really excited about Solana as well, was clearly, like, if you have the bandwidth, I use bandwidth as a metaphor, as as we've talked about this, like, if you have the bandwidth there, you can build clients that can support hundreds of millions or billions of users, right? And that's when this starts to get really, really interesting. And so now we have, in a sense, infrastructure that can do that. And the Instagram team, right? That was 6 people when Facebook acquired it, and it was enormous. WhatsApp was also a really small team that had achieved super scale because it was just software on mobile devices. That then, yes, there was some centralized pieces to it, but it was also an enormous amount of it was actually peer-to-peer. And so, well-designed user experiences that use stablecoins that are able to take advantage of new types of economic logic that targets the VM and the transaction processing of a public chain. Yeah, we don't know what people are going to build. We have no idea what people are going to build, and that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, this is like, like, I can't imagine how much work it would be to get, like, for me to like get regulated safe access to a bank where I can programmatically create accounts and transfer money between those accounts. Like, this would be like blood, sweat, and tears for 5 years versus somebody can implement, this in a in a protocol that's trustless and without ever taking custody of the funds of any users or putting them at risk, they can scale this out to like the entire world.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, right? Like this is like science fiction as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, there are problems that have to be solved. Like, and you know, as you know, like we've spent a lot of time trying to build USDC in a way where it works within a regulatory framework. And the reality is that global stablecoins that are going to be widely adopted on a massive scale in mainstream end user, commercial, market infrastructure, all these use cases, they're gonna have to work within the emerging kind of rule set around global stablecoins. And the good news is that governments are sort of saying, yes, these are actually like, this is legitimate infrastructure for the international monetary system. That's amazing. The fact that that's going on at the G20 right now, and that is a view, and that the heads of the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank and others are sort of saying, yes, stablecoins are here and they're here to stay, and the private sector is like driving this stuff, and that's a really big deal. But there are problems to solve, right? User experience is still something that people need to crack the code on in these client experiences, and obviously on DeFi, like it can be really complicated for people and really scary. And so I think that's a place for product designers and entrepreneurs and others to really innovate. And then I think there's other things like, around identity and attestation models are going to be really, really critical. And again, like public chains are the perfect infrastructure for solving problems with identity and identity attestation, so that you can sort of do things compliantly, but also give people self-sovereignty, give people incredible amounts of autonomy, give people the speed and convenience and efficiency of all of this as well.
This kind of follows this like idea that software is eating the world.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, software is eating the actual underlying mechanics of the monetary system, which is pretty cool. Although it's interesting to note, I met briefly at an event the CIO of the Federal Reserve, and I asked him, I said, what is the U.S. dollar? Like technically, what is it? And I said, I assume it's like a SQL database. And he said, yeah, the dollar is an Oracle database, running on like a Solaris set of, cluster of Solaris hardware. That's the dollar. And there are foreign keys and records, or there are records that are also, in physical form that are outside the database, which are predominantly in $100 units and are mostly shipped overseas at the rate of about 500 billion per year. But most of the records are the kind of M1 electronic cash records in that SQL database.
That is crazy. Dear God.
Yeah, and then when people realize that payments today are basically, common delimited text files and secure FTP servers, that is the underlying basis for the US dollar financial system. Like at the core, that's actually what it is.
Yeah, that is frightening. It would almost have been better if it was all still done on paper in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what is your view on how China's approaching this like government-based blockchain?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I've known the teams working on that for a long time. They got started back in 2015, we were really fortunate to have some great investors out of China, and so had a chance to meet over the years with PBOC leaders, including the people behind the digital currency initiatives there. And I think a couple things to note. I mean, I was always very, very impressed with the receptivity of the Chinese government to blockchain technology, to the ideas of digital currency. I remember even in like 2017, they had like 400 people working in their digital currency research area. I mean, that's a lot of people. So, they've always been, I think, looking at this in a deeper way. But, the thing about DCEP is, I think what a lot of people misunderstand about it is, in many ways, as people know, in China, digital money already exists on a massive scale to the tune of like 800 million daily active users with Alipay and WeChat Pay. And so what's emerged is the traditional state-owned enterprise banking system, was leapfrogged by mobile digital money, and those private companies, that are these VIE structures, so these offshore private companies, I think, we're attaining an enormous amount of market power, and for the Chinese government, that's a real issue. And so, in many ways, DCEP is a response to the market power of private sector actors, and really their desire to ensure that there's a third way that is, in fact, a government, initiated way that also can kind of reestablish the preeminence of the banking sector a little bit. So there's sort of like there's multiple dimensions to this. It's not like they said, hey, digital currency, we're going to go and this is the future. It's also, there's a very unique set of domestic circumstances that have led to that development. The fact that they're using public key cryptography, pseudonymous, forms of tokenized fiat is pretty cool. It's not blockchains. It's a very centralized system. Layer two, not like layer two that we would talk about in blockchain land, but layer two of their DCPE system theoretically could take that underlying tokenized, PKI based digital cash and use that to back something on a blockchain. So there could eventually be blockchains that interact with DCEP, just like the reserves that back USDC, those are, that SQL database once again. But no, I think it's really impressive what they've what they've been able to do. But that model of the government building out that infrastructure is not really a model that has been successful in the West. Like electronic money in the West and most of the global financial system is largely built through associations of private financial institutions that are run consortiums for standards, for interoperability. That's what SWIFT is. That's what Visa is. That's what for the most part the ACH network is. And so I think with like global stablecoins, the likely path is one where associations like something like Centra Consortium or Libra Association really lead the way in terms of what gets built for mainstream society.
Yeah, that was actually kind of the question that I wanted to follow up with. It's typically like my view of this was kind of working at Qualcomm is that Europe set a standard and most of Asia set a specific standard for wireless, but in the US people kind of fought it out. And is that like, I think with wireless, it ended up with having more technical innovation in the long term, but kind of slower adoption. Is that something that you see like playing out here, or like do you think that like a government can push this kind of like one standard and kind of jumpstart everything?
I mean, I think in this space, in crypto and blockchains, like it's much more like kind of the innovation of like protocols and software on the internet. I think there's in many ways, I think it moves incredibly fast. So I feel like, the amount of innovation that's happening, for example, in layer one chains is really remarkable. In some, I think for some people, they'd say, God, it's painfully slow. These are complex, they're brittle, it's like really, it's dangerous if you upgrade them. There's all these sort of issues and it's really, really slow. And why is it taking us so long to get to higher throughput or whatever it is that you're measuring it by? But I think, you know, it's really fast. And I think if you had something like the federal government saying, here's the technical standard for a US dollar digital currency, I mean, it would be out of date almost immediately. And so, you know, when I think about these innovation cycles happening, like whether it be in the underlying kind of layer one infrastructure or the kind of protocols that you can build on top, like that's gonna move at a really fast pace relative to what a government might be able to do.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you. I think this was like advice given to me by Dan Bonet, is that like do the cryptography last, because as soon as you pick something today, it's outdated. I already have 2 students working on the next generation papers, and I think that that's going to be true in the space for a bit. There's a question that's kind of always pops up when folks talk about stablecoins, and that's to do with privacy and anonymous transactions. Do you think that there is some combination of like the kind of technologies that people are working on, like zero knowledge proofs and regulatory compliance, that will work? Like, are these like forces that just cannot be combined?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I mean, I think like there are so many layers to this, obviously, and I think you know, confidential transactions are like absolutely essential to in fact, they're absolutely essential to stablecoins going mainstream. In fact, yesterday I had on my podcast, I had Paul Brody from Ernst & Young, and they, you know, they built a zero knowledge proof based, you know, kind of layer for Ethereum tokens called Nightfall. And yeah, the premise being like, if I'm, you know, they're focused on like enterprises adopting stablecoins for like on-chain commerce and other transactions. The point is like, if I'm a company and I'm like using this to like pay people or invoice people or get paid, like I got to be damn sure that like competitors aren't looking at that, right? Or you know, I need privacy. It's like really, really critical. And in fact, there's too little privacy on public chains right now, in many respects. And so even just from a purely commercial perspective, I know there's a lot of focus on the individual and individual sovereignty and financial privacy in that regard, but just think about a firm and how confidential its transactions are. You know, having zero knowledge proof based privacy systems is like deeply fundamental to making this work, you know, commercially at scale. Now, the other flip side is like, as a firm, like I legally, you know, am subject to an audit, and I need my auditor to be able to look at my books and records, and that's also important, right? So I think no one's saying like we're gonna, you know, corporations are just gonna all of a sudden like go dark, and there's no longer gonna be you know, audits for fraud or accountability around fraud or things like that. And so I think we have to find ways where you can have, you know, blind transactions, but you also have the ability to you know, conduct an audit if you have a trusted, you know, a trusted third party that you're giving permission to do that with. The other piece is just, you know, at what level is digital currency treated as digital cash, as a bearer instrument? And it is inherently today, these stablecoins are bearer instruments. And I think that's really critical to treating them that way, to make them programmable objects and data, you know, that can be worked with. I think that the thing that society needs to work out, and I say society here because I think this is ultimately, you know, a set of trade-offs that'll exist between people, firms, governments, et cetera, and their needs, is how can we take advantage of significant innovations in privacy preserving technologies to give people more privacy, to become less subject to, you know, identity theft, data breaches, all of these things that have been horrendous on the internet, and crypto is an answer to those things. But also this gets back to like, we need models for identity where we can do things like have identity attestations on chain, so I can move around in a very private way, but ultimately, like, you know, if there's a criminal investigation, there's also, a path for law enforcement. So, it's complicated, and there are a lot of pieces, and just kind of trying to fit all this into the existing rule set that exists with the financial system. I don't think that's a good answer. I think we need to go to a different place.
Yeah, this is tough. Also, like a question that I've been wrestling with: do you, as an engineer, technologist, think that this needs to be plugged into the actual core part of the system, or can it run in a virtual machine? Like, can we have like a zero knowledge privacy layer that is for let's say a tested users all are transacting in the same pool, or does everything that the full chain, like all of the chain's functionality, need to be zero knowledge for this to work? This is kind of like as an engineer, like how do you you can do both, right? So what is the right answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think philosophically, you'd want to have something that can do that at the core. What societal rule sets say is a different matter. There's sort of what's technically possible, what's technically desirable. And you would seemingly want to do the thing at a technical level that gives you the greatest degree of security and privacy possible, as just, I think philosophically, and then again, how that is applied, and if there are there societal rule sets that are applied around that, is a completely different question. I mean, that's happening with AI right now, right? Like AI, unregulated AI is it's actually, societies are terrified to some degree of, there have to be ethical rule sets around the application of AI in certain domains. Like you can't, otherwise there could be incredible harms done. And so whether that's AI or self-flying cars or genetic technology, bioengineering, or digital assets, right? Each one of these, there's what's technically possible, and then there's what is society willing to accept in terms of risk and consequences.
That is I don't know if you ever seen the Kurzweil kind of singularity graph.
Totally.
Yeah, and it feels like we're in that inflection point for a dozen things at the same time.
That's the whole idea. These mutually compounding effects, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. One funny theory that one of my friends said, that if we're in a simulation, the obvious data set that it would train on is this thing that was nearest to the simulation, right? So we're probably in the simulation because of that, because we're experiencing the time period right before it happened.
The Elon Musk theory as well.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of looks like you're in a simulation.
Well, this is AI, right? This is I think a happy use of it. I can do this with my parents that are far away, and my kids can kind of play around with silly things on the internet, like cats on the internet. I think a lot of folks are super serious about the space, but they forget that some of the most exciting things came out of just silly things, sharing pictures of your family, right? Ended up being $1 trillion company that's stealing all our data. But so yeah, I do you think I am aware that we're building something immensely powerful, that is probably bigger than Solana, bigger than our team. What do you think are in terms of what should we be avoiding, in terms of pitfalls? How do we not end up like Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think so much of crypto, I mean, there's I've always thought that there's sort of an intrinsic DNA on the internet. The intrinsic DNA of the internet is, open intellectual property, open source software, decentralized, distributed networks, permissionless access. That's like if you look at all these layers of the internet that have been built up that have achieved global network effects, there's so many like that. And then there are people who've taken that and built really, really powerful centralized platforms on top of it as well. But like the DNA of crypto is, you know, fundamentally, I think, very well aligned with that intrinsic DNA of what has come before in other layers of the internet. And so I think, I mean, people talk about this all the time, Web 3.0, et cetera. But like, I think, you know, really staying true to that is just so important. And just trying to see that through and realize that, you know, the infrastructure that we're creating, like there might be enormous centralized platforms and companies that are built on it, that will happen, right? But that in building this as open infrastructure, it's gonna create an open, you know, an open playing field, a surface area that so many creative technologists and entrepreneurs and others can build on, that, you know, it's let 1,000 flowers bloom. There's gonna be so much otherwise that comes from it.
I like 100% agree with you. I think like there's just kind of a natural human want to be open with your ideas. And like, I think, you know, the internet is one of those things. Open source development is another. And like, I can't even name the protocols that are developed in the closed source way.
Right.
Right. Like,
right. Yeah.
So that part I think has been like, for myself, like I was a teenager in the 90s, and then I remember like playing around with Linux and then seeing this like stupid lawsuit by SEO and having that play out for like a decade and thinking that was like the last of the old world, like trying to clinging it to something. I think like this idea of like open money and like this borderless transfers, I think is another angle to this that will, I think, like kind of open up the world to really like open finance.
Yeah.
It's extremely complicated for me to transfer funds just to my family in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they're like, I think, the early adopters for crypto, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah.
Do you think that like we'll see more adoption outside of the US, outside of like places where we have like some like Venmo, right? Like,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, they're sort of like what a lot of people refer to as like the last mile problem. And you know, I think there's sort of two pieces. I think the more that there is like the monetary base of stablecoins grows, the more that you have kind of an internal economy of transactions that can happen, and more businesses, products, and services that are connected to it, the more that people just will stay in it, right? And so that's certainly the bet we're making, and that's just going to grow and grow and grow. But you also want to connect the other gateways, as it were, right? You want, you know, it should be really easy for me to, if I have a crypto wallet and I have USDC, to send it to someone else who has a crypto compatible wallet and receive it as USDC. I should be able to do that in, you know, 350 milliseconds for free. And the person on the other end should be able to like take that USDC and say, like, spend it using a tokenized Visa credential instantly at a Visa point of sale or something like that, right? The last mile problem of like, okay, how do I, you know, how do I put this to use? If I can't, you know, kind of convert it to a local banking, could I at least convert it into a Visa token and then use it, you know, through an existing last mile infrastructure that already has enormous scale? And so I think that like the sort of connectivity of the kind of digital currency native infrastructure, which will grow and grow and grow, has its own internal network effects. More and more people will be native in it, having really seamless interaction and connectivity to existing payment instruments as well on both sides of it is really important. Those are problems that we're obviously really focused on at Circle.
That's awesome. I would be like, Visa is like one of those, like everybody always brings up their TPS. I think it's like one of the use cases that is like, we have the tech to do it now. Do you think like adoption for something like a Visa network using crypto is going to come from established companies like them, or like startups like yourself, or some crazy entrepreneur out in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if you look at fintech today, in whether it's in China or in Southeast Asia or the U.S. or whatnot, and there are exceptions to this, like most of the innovation that's happening in terms of payment experiences is happening in fintech software applications, right? It's in Venmo or in Cash App or in Apple Pay, or it's in the mobile software experience layer. And the internals of that are the digital money that's there is sort of the legacy banking system, but there's no reason why the internals of that can't just move over to digital currency. All of a sudden, all of these, fintech apps and services just can interact with each other finally, like email services could eventually, once people like plugged into the internet, So I think those things can happen. And, even companies like Visa, right, they're like a network of networks, and they're so much broader than I think the way a lot of people have historically even looked at them. In terms of how they work with the whole fintech universe. I mean, most people don't realize like the instant cash out feature that you get with like your peer-to-peer payment apps, whether that's like with Apple Pay or Venmo or PayPal or any of these, that's like Visa Direct. That's like a rail that they built that is like a push payment rail that is connected to debit accounts around the world. Like that's not credit card payments, but that's like a rail that they built. And so, anyway, I guess the Uber point is like, I think, the traditional banks, traditional like checking accounts, that kind of thing, I think those are the places that will get dislocated the most over time, as people just say, I'm just going to use these, entirely software-based experiences.
So this is kind of like unplugging your cable and your phone line and moving everything to the internet.
Yeah. That's the way I talk about is like stable coins and blockchains are over the top, money. It's an over the top, financial system, just like there's over the top communications and over the top media distribution and over the top, that's essentially what this is.
That's pretty cool. Like I remember this like very slow but rapid. It was both slow and rapid, like this evolution of turning off like a house phone and only having a cell phone.
Yeah. And then video services. I mean, my last company, Brightco, is an online video company, and when we started in 2004, it was really at the early stages of video. I mean, there's been video around, but like I had worked on Flash and putting video and getting video more ubiquitous in Flash, and I think like the idea was pretty clear. Like video would be as ubiquitous as text on the web. Anyone would be able to publish video streams to any device. It would eventually, you could replace television distribution. It was just obvious, and the thought was like that'll probably take about 10 years, and it took about 10 years. And I think like similarly, when we got started with Circle in 2013, like my view was like, yeah, this will probably take about 10 years until you have like ubiquitous, free, interoperable, payments and value exchange on the internet, right? So we're 7 years in. I think the next 3 years are going to be a pretty interesting time in terms of connecting stuff up.
My co-founder Raj, I wish he was in the spot in this channel too. He actually spoke of you as like kind of a legend entrepreneur in Boston. Can you like just briefly tell folks like what companies you started?
Yeah, sure. So I got started working with the internet in 1990, and then and played around with a lot of different ideas, and then just out of college was a co-founder of a Layer Corporation. But the first product we created was Cold Fusion, which was one of the first programming languages on the internet that let you build interactive software on the web. So we built the first commercial app server.
What year was that?
That was 1995.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. I remember the internet in 95. That's awesome.
Yeah, and the basic idea is like a browser is the new operating system, and anyone should be able to build a piece of software that they can distribute to a browser. And we need new programming languages that are easier to adopt for more people, because more software is going to be created. And the existing models were too difficult for the mass of people who needed to build like web developer style software. So, but we ended up building, products like multiple like app servers, developer tools. We had the most popular HTML authoring tool in the world. Millions of people used it, called Homesite. So we grew that. It was a public company. We merged it with Macromedia, which was another large company, and I was CTO there. And we worked on a lot of different things, like the primary authoring tools for content on the internet, and then and Flash Player, and that was really an effort to basically, back in 2001, 2002, when broadband was just sort of arriving, HTML had kind of stagnated at the time, and we wanted people to be able to build like rich, like media and communications applications that could run in browsers, and 98% of computers had Flash Player. We could upgrade the internet to a new runtime in less than 12 months because of so many people had Flash content. But anyway, that led me down the rabbit hole of video on the internet, and sort of similarly back in 2003, became obsessed with the idea that like television distribution and all video could move from closed walled garden proprietary systems to the internet. And so founded another company called Bright Cove in 2004. And Bright Cove is a sizable public company. I took it public in 2012, and powers, television distribution on the internet for a lot of media companies, major brands. It's sort of like the AWS of video platforms kind of thing. It's a great business. And I stumbled into crypto in 2012, and then kind of went down the rabbit hole, and ultimately felt like this space and the problems that it could solve were more significant than the web. Like the ultimately the impact on humanity would be far greater than the impact that the web has had. And I just thought, I want to spend the next, 20 years working on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, same. Like I as soon as I kind of like wrapped my head around crypto, I think felt like my brain exploded. Like the possibilities are endless. So like, I can't imagine what else I'd be spending my time on.
Yeah.
We're getting towards like the end of the hour. I don't know if like, is there anything you want to like kind of tell folks about Circle and anything that you guys are building that's exciting?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like for developers, I mean, a lot of what we have tried to do this year is obviously we want to make sure USDC as like a standard and a format like works on leading edge blockchains, right? So it's obviously quite popular on Ethereum. We've rolled it out on Algorand as well, and we've just launched it on Solana. I mean, we're very interested in the move towards high availability, high throughput applications that use USDC, and so it's one of the reasons we're very excited about Solana. But we're very developer centric. So like a lot of the business today is developer APIs that people who need to connect between like the existing fiat system and stablecoins can do. So there's like payment APIs, payout APIs, kind of custody and wallet infrastructure, other things. It all works with sort of Solana. We haven't launched everything yet, but obviously we launched the first phase last week, which is going off to a good start. But it's basically these developer platforms and account infrastructure to let people integrate this into payment apps, commerce apps, financial apps, and I think USDC has become really popular in DeFi. We think Solana is a really attractive platform for DeFi as well, and so would encourage developers who are working in that area to take a look at other stuff we're doing. It's developers.circle.com. There's a lot there.
That's awesome. Like, so folks, if you're thinking about building something that's integrating directly to fiat, go check it out. So that was developers.circle.com.
Yep.
I think these are the applications that can actually scale to like hit hundreds of millions of people. So because regular people like my parents, they use dollars, and that is I think going to be the first entry point for them into cryptocurrencies.
Totally.
So that's amazing. So thank you for being here. I'm excited about like everything that we're building. So this has been just an awesome, really fast kind of partnership. Not only are you guys building great products, you're shipping them like at a ludicrous speed. So awesome to be working with you guys.
Likewise, it's been tremendous working with you guys too, and you guys are I think executing really, really well. So congrats.
Awesome, thank you.
Cool.
That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeremy. We have like one or two questions. It looks like we have just a few last minutes. I think the first one that pops out for me is, will USDC have anonymous transactions?
We kind of answered that one a bit, or dove into it a bit, but
okay. If we think we already covered that one enough, but I think we're good. There's one or two other ones here in the questions tab. If you think either of those deserve either more of a dive.
I see the what if government is unethical, totalitarian, and imposes CWC? That's an interesting one. I mean, I think, look, I mean, there are probably going to be governments in the world that say this is the one legal tender and it's this digital currency, and everything else is banned. I mean, theoretically, like India banned Bitcoin, but like there's a lot of people in India using Bitcoin. I think this is one of those things where in this new world, people who are connected to the internet with a smartphone are gonna essentially kind of elect which economic system they want to participate in, and it is going to create strife in some places. I think that there ultimately will be, there will be challenges where society in a country is saying, no, we want to participate in this open finance world, and the government wants something else. And I did a podcast recently with the guys from Castle Island Ventures, Nick Carter, his view is like there will be governments that are toppled. Governments will be toppled because of crypto, at some point. So, I mean, look, it's complex, but the internet has created a lot of these issues with communications and information sharing, and it's created challenges for totalitarian governments everywhere.
Cool. It looks like that's it. This was an amazing way to end a week full of events, Jeremy. So I appreciate you rounding out the Wormhole Hackathon events with us. It was a pleasure. This will be up on YouTube tomorrow for anyone who didn't get a chance to see the entire conversation. I think awesome. Any last words or any place we should send folks to before we jump off?
I think we're good.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, Jeremy. Thanks, Sully.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, bro.
Take care.
Bye-bye.